I'm Tanja. Welcome to our class today, and we are focusing on joint care. So it'll be a full body class, and we're going to be going through lots of the different joints in the body to help strengthen joints and make them nice and mobile. So what you need for the class is either a towel or a band, a belt, anything like that. And I have a little cushion just to put under my head. You don't necessarily need one. In fact, I'll probably take that one away. Awesome. So let's get started. So we're going to be coming onto our back, and I'll start with the right leg, just as that one is closest to you. And I will admit I have got plenty of holes in my socks because I've got two little Jack Russells that think it's fantastic to play tug of war. So, and did you know what? It makes them happy, and I like watching them, so I never worry about my socks. But I thought I'd make that confession now. So let's just start with the hamstring stretch first. So we want the leg in the strap, or the towel, or the belt. I'm just going to refer to it as a band. So get the leg up there first, and then what I want you to do is actually straighten the other leg, because it will affect the position that the pelvis is in. I might actually put that under there just so I can see the camera better. Good. So when you have the band or your towel over the foot, try and have it more over the ball of the foot, and the other leg is straight. So now what I want you to do is take your leg down until you can get it nice and straight, and then start to bring it up, keeping it straight. And now really watch your knee, because sometimes in the class we'll say straighten your knees and there's people with bent legs. So really try and push the kneecap out the back. So unless you are hypermobile in the knee joints, so some people's legs almost like bend the other way, then we don't want to be locking the joint for you guys. But for most people, squeezing this kneecap and making it nice and straight is perfectly fine. And that's going to help engage these muscles in the front of the leg. So now what I want you to actually do is gently draw down this belt or the strap, but again, it needs to be ball of the foot area. Okay, so it's going to start to get into the back of the leg there and down over here. So why is this important? Well, often people, when we're in a hamstring stretch, all we're focusing on these muscles here, where actually the calf has a huge impact on knee function and hamstrings. So we want to make sure that we are stretching off the calf and the hamstring. So really trying to flex that foot as much as you can. So just quickly, so that's a point and that's a flex. Okay, so that when the toes are coming back towards the face. Now in that position, when we engage the front of the leg, the brain is now telling the back of the leg that you've got to lengthen, you've got to, and I want to use the term stretch, it isn't really stretching, it's letting the muscle get long, okay? It's telling the muscle, you need to get long so that I can contract the front of the leg more. So we can kind of use that to facilitate stretching in the body. So for developmental stretch, for anything that we want to increase the range within the muscles, we want to hold for at least 20 seconds. And then you might feel that the discomfort eases, and then you can take it a little bit further. But again, try not to have that knee bent, because some of the hamstrings are not in play then. It's better to even have your leg there and keep it completely straight. Okay? When I first started doing Pilates, you know, my hamstrings were very, very, very tight. It's taken a lot of work to be, even this leg, to get it up to this position. So don't be put off if your leg isn't very high. Good. So now what I want you to do is take both the bands into your right hand, and we're going to pull the leg out to the side and pop that elbow on the floor. Put your left hand on your left hip, or you can put it out to the side and look towards your left. Because what we're trying to do is stop that hip from rolling over. Again, we have an ego The ego wants you to put the foot on the floor because then you're super amazing. But you're not actually getting a stretch in this position because technically you're actually in that position, you're just lying on your side. So we want to keep those hips facing forward. Now what you can do, if you've got additional cushions and whatnot, you can put a block next to that and it just stops that pelvis rolling. Again, try and have the legs nice and straight. Move that band up a little bit. There we go. So find your discomfort level. Now if it's very early in the morning, you might want to work to a discomfort level of 5 or 6. You might not want to work that intensely. But if it's the end of the day and the muscles are warm and you've been running around working, then maybe you can increase that intensity to a 7 or an 8. So a 5 is, oh, I can feel that. It's uncomfortable, but it's not excruciating. A 7 or 8 is like, ooh, I can feel it. Again, keep that knee joint nice and straight. I just felt mine bending a little bit. Relaxing your shoulders. When it comes to stretching, we want to enjoy this. Enjoy is a strong word. We want to release the body. If we are tense and you're like holding this position, the body's not going to open up and stretch to you. Good. Now bring that leg up and then switch hands. Now caution for anyone that has had a hip replacement. So if you've had a hip replacement in this leg, just as a precautionary, we don't want to take that leg all the way across because it can compromise the joint over there. So what you want to do is where the foot is, and it just wants to be in line with the other hip, like you're trying to line your toes up with the opposite hip bones, okay? Now, if you've had your hip done 10 years ago, you might not have any problem. I've had a dancer in the class who's had both hips done and she has the full range and it doesn't really matter. It's just a precautionary, okay? Otherwise, you can take that leg further across, but you want to keep that bum on the floor. So be aware of the leg coming off of the floor. That comes into a bit more spine. And what I'm trying to do here is really stretch off all the surrounding muscles of the joint before we strengthen them. Okay, we just want to loosen, get the synovial fluid flowing. Pay attention to the foot that is on the right leg, because often people will sickle the ankle. So sickle is when it folds. And it's not very good for the ligaments when you do that. So push the ball of the foot into the band, and that can also help keep that straight. This one's not a very nice one, this one. And you might find like men, particularly because of their femur bones, join the pelvis more on the outer pelvis, whereas female femur bones come up more underneath. This can be quite intense for men in the IT band. And that's general. And then bring that leg back up. So just give it a little shake. So what we're doing now is we're going to take it into something called cherry picking, which some people hate and some people love. Right, so what I want you to do, this is a fantastic foot exercise. You're going to put the towel or whatever you've got just where the toes are so that your toes can work against that. Now, if you've got arthritis in your toes, you might not have that much mobility. I've also got clients that have got titanium toes. But in your head, you still want to be doing it because it's still innervating the muscles that are around those bones, even if you've got metal bone structures there, okay? So I've got the band just behind the toes. So having that nice stretch on the leg. Now what I want you to do is point the foot up towards the ceiling. I'm not so much using the toes to point, I'm using the ball of the foot to point, like I'm wearing stilettos. Not that I've worn stilettos before. From there, I'm going to take my toes and wrap them around the band. So think of picking a pencil up with your toes. Now I'm going to keep the band gripped with my toes. Really watch the toe joints. So as you start to flex, those toes are still holding on. What your brain might do, as soon as you start to flex, it might want to release the toes. So your challenge is to try and keep those toes curled as you flex. And woo, you'll feel that down the back of the leg, hopefully. Okay, and then release the toes. So point, take hold of the band, keep holding the band, and then have that nice big strong flex and let go. Point, take hold, flex, release. And you might notice your other toes are doing the same thing. I'll just see mine do that. Whoops. Point, take hold, and then. So really good sole of the foot. It works those muscles around there. It works the toes, toe mobility, toe strength. Last one. And then release. Good. So, last thing we're going to do on this leg is a leg circle. And so we've stretched off these muscles around the joints, the knee joint and the hip joint. We've done a little bit of work into stretching off the muscles at the back there, soles of the foot, getting some movement into the toe joints, the foot joint. Now we're going to work back into the hip joint, mobilizing the hip. So there's different variations of the leg circle. So Joseph Pilates, who is the creator of Pilates, his leg circles used to lift the bum, which is fine, but it's more of a back exercise. Whereas today I really want to focus within the hip joint. And it's a really nice exercise to do when you've got a towel or a band or something. So take the left leg and just move it to the corner of the mat and then flex your foot and push it down into the mat. So we engage in the back of the leg. It's also going to help to stabilize your pelvis. Now, taking both the hands, some people like to hold it there, some people like to have the elbows on the floor, entirely up to you. We're going to go cross body first. Now remember, for those of you that have had your hip replaced, you just take it across to the opposite hip. We take the leg down towards the other foot. You take it out to the side. If you've had your hip done, this one is fine. You're in a good zone over there. And we're going to circle around. So you can use your hands to do a lot of the work for you if you want to. The more you can relax the leg, the more the muscles will switch off, which is quite nice. So be aware of the pelvis. So is your pelvis doing this? So we want to try and keep the spine still, the pelvis still. And what that does is it's called dissociation of the hip. Can we move the femur bone inside of the pelvic hole, the socket, without the pelvis moving? And what that does is it creates the freedom of movement within the joint. Okay? So, change direction. So we've done a nice little stretch to make these a bit easier. Now, maybe you can hear or maybe you can't, I don't know. I've got a clicky hip on this side and you might have a clicky hip. So a clicky hip is, you're not doing anything wrong, providing it's not painful. We never work to pain. It's a tendon or ligament just flicking over part of the bone in the body. So you don't need to worry about that. It just feels horrible. And so some people, I got it in the back over there. Some people can have it in the front of the hip. Clicking hip or snapping hip syndrome, it's called. And it's usually an indication that there's some muscles in the body that's tight. Good. Now, once you bring that leg back up, bend your knee, and then we do the other side. So we start with the hamstring stretch first. I bet you forgot about that. Let's make sure that's over the ball of the foot. You can see all my, my holes. So, remember, straight knee. So this is my more flexible leg. And you might have noticed now that one of your legs feels a little bit easier than the other one. So we all have that kind of imbalance. So all I want you to do is, if this is your tightest side, just be a little bit more gentle, okay? Sometimes people's one leg can go all the way there, and then they're trying to force the other one to do the same thing. We don't want to be doing that with the body. So if your left leg is your tighter one, just be a little bit nicer to that leg. So find that straight knee, take it down, bring it up to where that knee is nice and straight, and then flex that foot and just gently pull the ball of the foot towards you so that we can get back into this area over here, a little bit more of the upper one. Okay. Keeping the kneecap engaged to try and keep those quad muscles fired up, your muscles over here. And what does that do? It helps to make the back of the leg longer, so to speak. So we can use that. So once that starts to ease a little bit, maybe you can take it a bit deeper. Remember, if this is a morning class for you and the body's cold, especially in the middle of winter, be gentle, especially with stretching cold muscles. We want to, for a developmental stretch, ideally the warmer they are, the better. So maybe a discomfort scale of 5 or 6 if it's in the morning and you've done nothing else. Or perhaps you've been working night shift and you've just got out of bed. So whenever you haven't done some movement, or if it's end of the day, you can work a little bit more deeper into this. So for developmental stretching, we want to be here for about 20 seconds. I was about to say 20 minutes. 20 seconds if we can. Good. So now what we're going to do is take that into the, I forgot the other side. Take it out to the adductors, so we stretch the inner thigh. So both bands into your left hand, and we're going to take that leg out to the side. If you can put the elbow on the floor. So be mindful. For some people, if they're quite tight, what they start to do is drop the leg, and the leg goes closer and closer and closer to the other foot, and you actually lose a lot of the stretch. So make sure that the ankle stays in line with the hip, even if that's as far as you can take the leg, rather than dropping it down there, because you're going to lose a lot of the stretch on the inside of the thigh. I've got a door over there. Right hand onto the pelvis to stop the hips rolling over or to give you that feedback, or you can have it out to the side looking at it. But making sure that that left knee is nice and straight. And just every few breaths, just trying to deepen it a little bit more and more. So remember, if the body's tense, we can't stretch a tense body. We want the body to be nice and relaxed. And as you exhale, bring that leg up. Switch hands. So remember, if you've had your hip done on this side, that ankle just wants to come in line with the opposite hip. Otherwise, take it as far as you can, but don't want that bum coming off of the floor. Again, you can have your left hand out to the side. This one is so uncomfortable. Engage the ball of the foot just slightly into the band so that your ankle is straight, and then, and a bit of a tendency for that knee to bend. So keep those knees nice and straight. All we're doing is just moving the femur bone across the body a little bit. Sometimes if you just focus on what the actual bone's doing, it can help that position. Just have a few more breaths here. Good. And then bring the leg back up again. Now we're going to cherry picking. So, band behind the toes, nice and tall. We send the foot up to the ceiling, so we point with the ball of the foot. Now grab hold of the band with your toes. Now flex the foot, but keep the toes curled over. Now be aware if your knee wants to straighten. Keep that knee nice and straight, and then release. So point, grab hold, flex, release. Point, take hold, flex, release. Now, if you start cramping in your feet, that is completely normal. I don't think I've ever taught a Pilates class where someone hasn't had a cramp in their feet or calves. So really don't worry. And it might be that just today you do a few and then you stop, because often with cramps, once you get them, they're hard to get rid of. Good. Just trying to go a little deeper each time. So now we've got 2 calf muscles. So one calf muscle is there and one is there. So we're trying to get to both of them. Okay, fantastic exercise for the toes, this one. People underestimate how important toe mobility is. Good, and then release that. So if your toes don't move or they don't bend, it makes walking a lot more harder, and then you've got to ask other muscles to start helping you walk, which aren't really designed for that. Balance, all sorts of things. So really, really important to look after the health of the feet as much as any other part of the body. Right, so we're going to come into the leg circles now. We go cross body first. So remember, if you've had a hip replacement, you just come up to there. We take the leg down, out to the side and back up. So let's do 6 circles in each direction. So this side for me, I tend not to get any clicking bonus. And maybe your circles are small. Remember, we want to keep that pelvis nice and stable as well. So if you're doing really big circles and you're shaking all over the place, make the circles smaller. Just come back to there. We're focusing on stirring inside of the hip joint. So maybe we've got about 2 left. I've lost count. And then bring it back. Maybe you've not done Pilates before, but Pilates teachers can't count. And then we go the other way. Again, if you've had that hip, you just take it up to the line of the other hip. Keeping it nice and stable. So like this one, I can't feel any clicking in that hip, so that tells me that no tight hip flexors on this side. Oh, it feels nice. And then once the leg comes back up, we can release it. So the last thing we're going to do on our back is spine curls and some, actually we've got a couple of, going to turn as well, but on our back, it's the last thing on our back. Now with this position, we don't want anything hard under the head. So if you've got like a block, take that away. A soft cushion is okay, just nothing that's very hard. It doesn't give the neck any leeway. So we've done a lot of loosening and mobility of the hip. We're actually going to look at strengthening the hip joint now. So from here, I like to have my hands on my hips. You can have your hands down to the side of you, whichever you prefer, but neutral pelvis. So the 2 hip bones and the pubic bone are parallel to the floor. So if I put a cup of tea there, it's going to stay there. There's that gentle curve in my lower back, and I'm lengthening my spine. The chin is slightly dropped down. So I kind of teach the spine curls a little bit different to traditional teachers, just because Joseph Pilates was all about the spine and spine health. So the way I teach is it gives the lower spine a little bit of additional movements. But we're going to start with an inhale, taking it into an anterior tilt. So breathe in. As you breathe in, you're going to send your pubic bone down towards your heels. So you're making a really big arch in your back. And as you exhale, we're going to send your lower back down to touch the floor. Inhale, anterior tilt. We're sending the hip bones forward. And then posterior, we send the hip bones back as we breathe out. Inhale, pubic bone to the heels. Exhale, pubic bone comes more towards your heart. And then when you're in your pelvic tilt, you want to think of trying to bring your ribs and your hips closer together. So this helps to loosen off the lower back. And this is just why I like to add these little movements into the spine curl. Because if you're doing something, you might as well get the most out of it. Good. Now on the next exhale, we're actually going to start, come into the pelvic tilt. Now start to squeeze your bum and send your hips up towards the ceiling. So I like to have my hands on my hips. You can also have your hands down to the side of you. So from here, if you can, just check your hip bones and make sure that you're not dropping in one side. So if you've had sciatica or something before, maybe an ankle injury, we can have a weakness in the body that's causing this hip to drop. So it's a case of really focusing on squeezing that bum a little bit more to bring those hips back up together. As you breathe out, imagine you want your hip bones to stay up towards the ceiling, but you're bringing your spinal column down fast. So again, imagine I'm a skeleton and I'm working with the bones. I really want to bring each vertebra down. The lower spine comes down before the sacrum, that chunky part of the back of the pelvis, and then neutral. Inhale. Exhale. Squeeze your bum, start to lift. Relax the shoulders. Now make sure you've got no weight in your neck or your head, so all the weight is across the shoulder joint. And we're just going to hold this. If you need to come down, and then just come up again. But be aware that your knees are not flaring, the toes are not lifting, or the ankles are not rolling. So we really want to be anchored down through the ball of the foot, the blade, and the heel. And the knees want to stay in line with those hips. So if you feel like your knees are pulling open, that can indicate tightness in some of the muscles in the body. So you've got to work to try and keep those knees in space. And sometimes maybe the knees want to pull together. That's quite rare. I will admit it's usually the knees popping out. And then as you come down, one vertebra, so the belly button pulls right in, and I'm trying to walk it down onto each vertebra. Relaxing the shoulders. Now do your bum cheeks touch the floor before your lower back? Can you really curl into that lower back? And then come back again. We'll do one more. Inhale. This is probably one of my most favorite exercises in Pilates, because I could probably teach this 100 different ways in one class. They probably wouldn't be able to walk tomorrow because the bums would be working so much. And then exhale as we come down. Good. So give your knees a quick squeeze. So that strengthens the bum cheeks, a little bit of the hamstrings, and also works spine mobility. Now what we're actually going to do is really target those bums a little bit more. So we're going to take ourselves up into the spine curl. So start with the anterior tilt. Exhale, and then come up. Now you might want to put your hands on the floor just for a bit of additional support. And we're going to do something called weight shifting. So I want you can close your eyes if you want to with this, but imagine you've got bags of sand on your legs. And slowly you're going to start to carry the sand from your right leg to your left leg. So what actually happens is you can feel the left leg is starting to engage more. So maybe the heel's getting heavier, the foot. The calf might be kicking in a little bit more, the hamstring at the back of the leg, and the bum cheek. And at the same time, the right side of the body is softening a little bit, it's lightening. Now what you're trying to avoid is just throwing your weight over onto one side. You almost want to imagine that you don't want the teacher to see which side of your body has the weight. So it wants to happen inside of the body. And that is stabilizing the pelvis. So we're really targeting the left bum cheeks with this particular movement. And if it feels available to you, maybe you can just lift that heel off of the floor without that right hip dropping. So this is sometimes I like to have my hands here, but if you might need to have the hands there for a bit of support. If you can lift the heel and keep the legs, the hips straight, maybe try and lift the knee. Then we bring that leg back down, put the heel down, and then we're going to transfer that weight without anybody seeing. So now maybe you could see the hamstring fire up, my glutes are fired up, but there was no rocking or throwing myself over. And then check, left heel, and if that's available, maybe bring the knee up. So what you're trying to notice is, has the bum dropped down, or maybe you've tilted to the side or something. And then once you've done your left leg, bring that one back down and then slowly come down. Once you come down, give your knees a cuddle. We're going to do that one more time. So this is a huge crampy one in the back of the leg. So a couple of reasons, well, there's lots of reasons you can cramp for this particular exercise. If the feet are too far away, that can get straight into your hamstrings. So bring the feet closer. Have a gin and tonic if you carry on cramping. Quinine, which is in tonic water, is really good for cramps. It can be in minerals, it can be all sorts. But generally, if the feet are quite far, that will get into those. So, last one. Now, if you want to make this harder, you can have your hands up to the air if you want to, or again, just have your hands on your hips. So, inhale. Nice deep breath, we're going to need it. Exhale, and then roll yourself up. So, let's actually start putting the weight into the right leg this time. So remember, I'm between two panes of glass. I can't move left, I can't move right. This is weight shifting. From there, can you lift a heel? And then maybe the leg. So has your left hip dropped down? So you kind of got to engage these muscles here to pull the hip up. And of course, use this even more to keep the hip up. We bring the leg back down. Shift the weight inside of the body. We stabilize before we mobilize. See if you can lift that heel, and then if it's available, lift. So has that side drop down. And then bring that leg down. And then roll down. So it can be that you've noticed a weak side. Again, quite common to have a weaker side. Whether you've had sciatica or injury, sometimes we just tend to stand more on one side. So what you can do then is, after the class, just do maybe 3 or 4 just on that tighter side. That will help strengthen those bum cheeks. But even I can feel the back of the legs there. Fabulous. So let's come into some side lying. So we're going to do what's called an oyster or a clam. So still working with the hips. Pop your head onto a block there. Now imagine your spine is lined up with the back of the mat. So if you have a wall and you can lie against it, you can do that. And the top, the knees are together. So you want to make sure the knees are flush so that they're not hanging off of each other in any position like that. And then the feet are under the bum. So you can, if you want to, have your hand here. I quite recommend having that hand on this hip bone. It's going to give you feedback. But just watch this top shoulder isn't leaning forward there. So you want to pull that shoulder back and slide the shoulder blade down. Now engage your legs a little bit. So squeeze your feet together and your heels together. And we're going to keep the feet on the floor, but we're taking the top knee up. So don't worry about breath with this one. So top knee floats up. As the top knee floats up, start to squeeze these muscles in your bum cheeks and your legs. And then bring it back down again. So hopefully you can feel that there's a little bit of activation already in the tummy. I don't even need to tell you to pull the tummy in. I quite like the side lying series because I find it's quite a lengthening position. But be mindful that your head is not looking down. Your head wants to be looking forward. Now on your next one up, keep it up there. So now I want you to really try and take that knee as far back as you can and then listen to what your hand is doing. Is your hand rolling back? Or is your hand staying in exactly the same position? It's just the hip, the thigh bone that's moving. Now this is working strength and mobility. Strength in terms of engaging these bum cheeks, making them nice and strong, and mobility because we're trying to make that range of motion a little bit bigger. Now, Joseph Pilates never used to do loads of reps. He used to do 4 or 5, possibly 6, because if you really squeeze in these muscles hard enough, you shouldn't be able to do more than that. So if you're there, then squeeze a bit harder. Good, last one. Like I can feel my bum shaking. and then bring yourself up. So, if you've got any shoulder problems, you can also put a block under your head or bend your elbows on this side. Knees are together, feet under the bum, growing nice and tall. So engage that knee up. Once the knee comes up, squeeze the bum cheeks and then bring it back down. Top hand is just on those hip bones. So as I take the leg up, now I'm trying to get the leg further without the pelvis rolling back. So this takes a lot of awareness. Awareness is something that you need to become aware of. So lots of ways I can feel this. So can I feel the top hip rolling up, back? Or perhaps I can feel the weight of my body rolling onto the bottom bum cheek. So it's like, what are you feeling movement-wise in your body? There doesn't want to be any movement in that pelvis. So squeeze the knee up and take it down. So for me, I feel like I have a lot more range in this side, but I don't feel as stable. And I'm quivering already. We'll do 2 more. Last one. And then bring the leg down. Awesome. So, we are coming into, so we've done a lot in the lower half of the body. We're now going to work just a little bit of the shoulders. So we're going to come into standing for that. And if you've got a wall, awesome. If you haven't got a wall or something to work against, then don't worry. So let's get into that position. So coming in for the last part, so we're focusing on the shoulders now. So we are going to start with an exercise called dumb waiter. I don't make the names up, that's what they are. So ideally, if you have a wall space, a door or something you can stand against, it's just going to give you some feedback. So obviously in a class, the teacher can help you. It's not so easy when you're at home. So the door can give you some feedback as to what's going on in your body. Feet are hip width apart, so underneath your hips. And you're having your hands in your waist. So I always recommend putting a little piece of paper, or even if you've got a band or something, just putting that between your elbows and your waist, because that's going to stop your elbows from flaring, okay? The wrists are in line with the elbows. So just imagine that you're a waiter and you're holding a tray of drinks, some Dom Perignon champagne or something. Now, standing nice and tall, what we want to do with this exercise is keep the whole body completely still. And if I have not got my skeleton, if I had the skeleton, the only thing that is technically moving is this arm bone here, okay? So I'll demonstrate. So from here, we're going to start to take the hands out. And like this is now where I get to the point. If I go any further, it's actually going to be my whole shoulder joint moving and the shoulder blades are going to come together. So I'm trying to get to that point, so I'm going to stop there. And then I'm really going to try and keep everything still as I try and take a little bit further, but without it coming into the shoulder blades, the whole shoulder joint. So one way we can actually do this is if you take your hand and pop it on top of your shoulder, so that your hand is around this area, because you're going to be able to feel if there's any movement. So I'm going to take that hand out, the elbow's glued to the side of my waist. So I get to there. Again, if I try, and you can do this, because if you do it wrong, you'll see what you're trying to avoid. So as you take your arm further out, now try and pull the shoulder blade towards your spine, or move your shoulders. And you can feel the movement of the bones under your hands. Come back to the start. Now we're trying to avoid that movement. So no movement in the shoulder bones. So I get to there, and I cannot take it a little bit further without the movement into the bones, and then bring it back. I actually quite like doing the single hand one. So elbows stay glued to hips, take it out, and how far can you take it? So also notice, is your lower back starting to arch more? Pull your rib cage towards your hips and engage those muscles. So there are times when we can teach this dumb waiter for back strength, and then we would say, go on, squeeze those shoulder blades together. So there's different ways of teaching these exercises. And unfortunately, within the Pilates industry, there are some teachers that think there's only one way to cook an egg, as Paul would say, and then bring it back, and then change hands. And a part of that is lack of education. I just think that some schools are teach people just to how to teach an exercise and not why they're teaching an exercise and what's actually going on in the body, sadly. So we take that hand out. So for me, I feel in this side there's a little bit of undue movement in my left arm. So I'm taking that, find the point. So that's where I've got no movement in the shoulder. Now can I take a little bit further? So I seem to have a little bit more funny movement in this one. And it's fine to have the movement, but it's like, are you actually trying to stop the movement? And if you're trying to stop the movement, your brain is still sending those messages to the body. So let's come back to the doubles. Just do a couple more. So now see if you can actually feel in your shoulder. Come back again, last one. Good. And then relax the arms. So the last one we're going to do is chicken wings. Just be mindful, this is quite a challenging exercise for a lot of people, especially as we get older, just because our joints do become a little bit more stiff if we haven't moved them all of our lives. So don't force your body, basically. This is all I'm saying. So we're going to have the hands to the side now. I'm going to stand to the side. What we are trying to do is we're trying to have the elbow, the wrist, and the fingers all in line with the shoulder. Okay? So now, as we move our body, what may happen is the hands might want to come forward. You might get the wrists coming forward and the fingers staying back, or vice versa. The elbows are going back and the hands are coming forward. So that's what we're trying to eliminate, is that movement that we get. So when you're standing against the wall, or the door, whatever, to get the arms back, have you just arched your back? Number one. So pull the rib cage, engage your tummy and pull the rib cage so the ribs and the hips are joined. Now from here, we slide the hands up towards the ceiling. Now, you might get to the point that I'm stuck, I can't move anymore. Move them slightly away, but you're trying to keep them back. And then you take the hands up. So for me, if I had to try and keep my hands against there, I would have to flare the ribs. So I'm trying not to flare the ribs. So I'm pulling the ribs in, which means the hands need to come slightly forward. And that will happen for a lot of people. Now, as I'm bringing the arms down, I'm pulling my tummy in and I'm trying to keep the rib cage down. I'm trying to keep my hands back, my wrists back, my elbows back. Not particularly comfortable. So we'll do one more like that. Take the hands up. So it's a good abdominal exercise as well if you're trying to keep that tummy pulled in. Good. Now we're going to actually keep the arms bent. So as you take it up, keep the arms bent. Now the hands are going to join at the top of the head. Keep going. This allows the scapula to have a bigger range of motion. So we're coming back into shoulder joint mobility. If we don't let that scapula move full range, we're going to lose that range. And then as you get older, you might only be able to take your arm up to there. So we need to be able to move. Again, pull the ribs down so that we're making sure this is a shoulder exercise, not a back exercise. So if you can see your fingers out the corner of your eyes, are they doing that? Or like that? Good. And then when you bring your hands down, relax. So just give everything a little jiggle and some nods. Sometimes you can get a little bit of a stiff neck with the shoulder exercises. Good. So shoulder joint care, health is so important, especially as we get older. The more we have these dissociative movements, so moving femur within the hip without the hip wiggling around, same with the shoulder. If you can move the bone around within the shoulder without everything moving, it creates a bigger range of motion or freedom of movement within the joint. So as we get older, we maintain our mobility, which is always a plus. So that is our session today for joint care. So have a fabulous day, and I'll see you in the next video.